I'm the Assistant Director for Skills and Employment at Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority. And in the team, we've been leading a piece of work on FE Coldspots for a couple of years now, actually. And we've been really well supported by colleagues at Grant Thornton, who I'm going to hand over to shortly to take us through these slides. But really pleased that we've got so many people engaged in the call this morning and that so many of you are interested in working with us on this really important piece of work. So I'm going to hand over to Rob from Grant Thornton, Rob Turner, and Rob with Vi and Roma will take us through the slides this morning, and I'll also chip in to answer any questions that you've got towards the end as well. So Rob, I'll hand to you. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Andrea, and great to see so many people. As Andrea said, by Roma and myself, a part of the Grant Thornton team that have been working with the Combined Authority over the past year. First of all, on a feasibility study, thinking quite hard and carefully about what provision might be required, and are now supporting in the next stages. So as we go through this webinar, please do use the chat function to put questions in, but obviously there'll be a decent time at the end for you to raise your hand, come off mute and ask those questions. So in terms of the plan, if we just flick to the next slide, please, Vi. In terms of the plan for today, I'm going to spend a little bit of time just setting the context. A number of you will know this just from various communications, various kind of meetings that you've been part of. But then we're going to talk a little bit more around why we've set up a capital grant funding programme and what it is. And then trying to get into a bit more of the detail about what we're looking to fund, the criteria that applicants will need to meet, the information we'll be asking you to provide, and then, of course, importantly, the key milestones and how you can apply. We are in the process, I think it's important to say right at the outset, we're in the process of finalising the guidance and the information, which you'll see later in the presentation is due to come out in the new year. So this is actually a really good opportunity to get your feedback and views on this. Things aren't set completely in stone. We've got a fairly good idea, as you'll see as we go through the slides, but this is a really useful opportunity to hear from experts like yourselves about what would be most helpful and most useful. So please do take the opportunity to ask questions, to provide feedback. There will be an email address provided at the end. Again, that's a good opportunity for further questions, because I know sometimes you need to digest this information, go away and reflect on it, and then kind of come back. So we want to make sure that the engagement is good and that it's clear, and that you kind of understand what's going on. So hopefully that will be most helpful in terms of the session. If we just go to the next slide. Let me just very briefly set the context. As Andrea said, that there's been a lot of thinking over the last couple of years around how within Cambridgeshire and Peterborough can prospective learners, so that's everyone 16 plus, how can they best access and best be supported in terms of further education? And that was driven by a rising kind of awareness and just kind of sense of an insight that there were a number of cold spots, so area where it was much harder to access provision, be that because of a lack of local facilities, be that sort of geographical transport barriers, or actually just kind of limited opportunities. And the Combined Authority has been committed to trying to reduce those barriers, and they want to do that through investing in learning facilities. They want to help improve access, and they want to partner with businesses and providers like yourselves, because actually addressing those kind of cold spots, those issues is really key. And a key first step in that was the feasibility study that we worked on with the Combined Authority. We consulted with a number of you on this call as part of that, as well as the kind of local authorities business base, to really understand, well, what is the particular need, and we were looking really closely at kind of East Cambridgeshire and St Neots as two areas that had been identified previously. What is the real need for further education in there? And I suppose there was a lot of information in that feasibility study report, but I guess these three headlines have really shaped our thinking and where we are currently with the grant funding programme. So the first was quite sort of clear that actually a big new campus and facility was not necessarily viable and needed. So this wasn't about kind of whole scale large building, but actually there was a real opportunity to expand provision and to create smaller specialized hubs to meet demand. And within that, and I'm sure the people on this call will recognise this, there was a real desire to make sure that actually, as we are looking to invest into provision in the region, as we are looking to invest capital, it's about actually working with existing providers. This wasn't about coming up with something brand new and different. It was clear from engaging with the providers like yourselves that actually there was a real opportunity to work with you to try and find a solution. And so actually this funding, if we just flick to the next slide, please, is a result of that. And so actually what we're trying to do, and why there is a capital grant funding programme, we want to accelerate investment into skills capital. We want to expand and work with existing providers in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough to do that. And this is all being driven by the overarching objectives that the Combined Authority has to develop a skilled workforce, to provide a robust offering of further education provision, and to ensure that whatever we're doing in terms of the investment does align to wider regional and national priorities for further education. Again, you will know that this landscape is developing and evolving as we speak. So we want to make sure that we're putting the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough region in the best possible place to respond to that. So that's a very, very brief overview of probably a lot of context, but just hopefully sets the scene. I'll now hand over to Vi to talk a little bit more in terms of the detail of the capital grant funding programme.
Thanks, Rob. So as Rob mentioned, following on from those objectives for the Combined Authority, the Skills Capital Grant Funding Programme was created. So this is looking to address those FE Coldspots in particular, so East Cambridgeshire and St Neots. So the pot itself is £4.8 million, and the intention is to allocate it across three kind of key areas. So the first is East Cambridgeshire, which we've currently allocated around 1.4 million to 2 million. Similar kind of range for St Neots, and then around 800,000 to 2 million for the wider region. However, these pots are not set in stone in any way, and the expression of interest stage that we'll kind of talk in more detail later on will definitely support in refining these allocations. And I think another thing that's important to mention is that each provider is not necessarily limited to one pot of funding. And these limits may vary depending on, for example, if the applicant is able to evidence benefits towards multiple regions. So it's very much a kind of work in progress that the expression of interest phase will help shape. So if I just move on to the next slide. So in terms of what we're looking to fund, so the key kind of elements, so if I start with capital, so in terms of defining what capital is, that includes both renovation and refurbishment of existing facilities, as well as any kind of equipment or kit that will be required to buy in order to deliver that provision. So all of these kind of elements are included within that capital funding. And then in terms of the learners that the provision is targeted towards, that's going to be 16 to 18-year-olds, adults age 19 plus, as well as young people that are not in education, employment or training. So all of these different groups can be targeted with this provision. And then following on from that, in terms of sectors, so the provision should be targeted towards the Combined Authority sector priorities, which are listed there in the green box, as you can see. But additional priorities were also identified in the feasibility study that we did, and these are health, education support, such as teaching assistants, as well as entry-level and work readiness skills. So as long as the kind of application for provision falls within these key sectors, that's kind of what we're looking for, essentially. And then moving on, in terms of criteria for applicants, so starting off, so it's important that applicants have an existing footprint in the area, and this doesn't necessarily mean provision per se, but is more around having a sound presence in the region. So that includes kind of existing networks, partnerships that have been established within the region so that there is that pipeline from delivering the provision into employment, etc., for those learners. Secondly, it's important that the funding is for capital purposes only, so this won't include things like staff, rent costs, etc. Next, in terms of if any physical changes to facilities are being made, then it's important that the assets are either owned by the FE provider, or if they do not have ownership of that asset, then there's sufficient evidence of permission in order to make these changes that must be provided along with the application. And then it's important that the improvement of these facilities should be solely intended for the provision of further education provision, so 16 to 18, 19 plus skills and tailored learning. Then in terms of evidence following on from that capital funding being invested, it's important that we can evidence a skills funding pipeline to finance the provision itself, as these costs won't be covered within this funding application. There should also be kind of evidence around an expected pipeline of learners to ensure that there is demand for the provision that's being delivered. And then where possible, I guess, evidencing strong established partnerships with a particular focus on that employer engagement element to ensure that that is that pipeline into employment following on from the provision, and that employers are being engaged in the process of delivering that provision as well. And finally, just to note that if applicants are successful in getting that funding allocation, then the funding should be spent within 12 months of signing the funding agreement. There obviously will be exceptions that can be discussed with the combined authority, but as a general rule of thumb, it's expected that there's about a 12-month kind of time frame for that funding. And I think I'm going to pass on to Roma now to talk a bit more about the application form itself.
Thanks, Vi. So now you've talked through the criteria, what information will the application ask for? So in terms of the application form, there are a few sections that we need to understand. So you've got applicant details, due diligence, benefits and outcomes, written responses and financial ask. So in terms of applicant details, such things such as lead organisation, consortia details, of course, if that's applicable, contact details, overview of funding request and proposed location will be asked for. We've got a section on due diligence. This will typically consist of a range of confirmation statements. So, for example, do you agree to the terms and conditions, the geographical location and the financial accounts for the last 3 years. We've obviously got a benefits and outcomes section because we want to make sure that we can maximise this in each proposal. And this is basically an overview of the intended benefits and outcomes. So this could include learner numbers and qualifications delivered. We've then got written responses. So these are the detailed questions that will really help us understand more about your proposal. And these will be graded from 1 to 5, where 5 would be the strongest. So this could include things such as the partnerships that Vi mentioned on the previous slide as an example. We've then got financial asks. So this will include proposed funding request, total cost and breakdown of these costs, and then the estimated expenditure timeline / payment profile, just as a few examples. We can move on to the next slide. Thank you. So in terms of the key milestones and what the timeline looks like, we've got the expression of interest window, which opens as of today, and this will take us through to the 20th of December. We've then got feedback on EOI, so that's expression of interest, and that'll be week commencing 6th of January next year. We've then got the application window, which will open on week commencing 13th of January. And then we've got a clarification question period. So if you've got any questions following this webinar and after the application window opens, that will open on the week commencing 13th of January, which will be open for a few weeks until the 7th of Feb. We've then got the application window closing, which is the 21st of February at 5 p.m. And then outcomes will be communicated from March 2025 onwards. So in terms of how we can move forwards, if we move on to the next slide, please, in terms of next steps. So in terms of applying to the Capital Grant Funding Programme, the first step will be to check out the website to understand more about the programme. So we've got a link here included for you to look at. We've then got number 2, which is registering interest by filling out the expression of interest form, which can be found via the link above on the website. We've got a screenshot on the right-hand side just to give you a flavour of what that looks like. And then you'll also receive an invitation to apply if you're eligible. If you do have any questions during the expression of interest phase, we have got an email address here at the bottom, which is skillscapitalgrant@uk.gt.com. So please feel free to drop us any questions in the meantime. I think we're over now to questions, which I'll pass over to Rob.
Brilliant, thank you. So hopefully that was a helpful overview of where things are currently at in terms of the plans and the timings. It would be great, and we've got plenty of time, be great to have an opportunity for people to raise questions. Please do that either via the chat function or raise a hand, and we will invite you in. And then between us and Andrea, we can try and ensure we get those answered. It's worth just noting that there may be some questions we don't answer now and that we need to take away. But what we will do is we can follow up via the website and to those who've expressed an interest with answers. But one of the benefits of recording is obviously we'll have details of people who've attended, so we can make sure that we get those things fed back to you. As I say, we want to hear from you about the different elements if there are questions, because we want to make it as easy and as straightforward both to think about should I apply and then be that application process itself. Any questions? I can see one from Stephen. What level of detail is required for the EOI, given we only have 13 working days to complete it? I'm hoping, Stephen, and you can hold me to this. I'm hoping it's a very, very quick response. It's a handful of very descriptive questions, which will probably take you 4 or 5 minutes to complete, and then a short overview of what you would be looking to apply. There's a fairly small word limit on that, so we're not expecting lots and lots of detail at this stage. We just want to get a sense of what you're thinking about in terms of your project, where it would be in very kind of outline pen picture format. The intention is, it shouldn't take you more than about half an hour to complete, because we are conscious it is nearly Christmas, but it just gives us, we just don't want to waste people's time, which is why we had the EOI process. So it's a good opportunity if you're unsure. I think I'd encourage you to submit an EOI, and we can take a look at that and then help you decide, rather than sort of going through the whole rigmarole of the application and then being told actually this wasn't eligible. Good question though, thank you very much. Michael, do come on in.
Yes, hi there, good morning. I noticed there's a requirement for the skills funding pipeline to be in place. Obviously, the ASF will be reprocured in a few weeks' time. What impact will that have on application for the capital funding? Because there's no guarantee that, for instance, ITPs will be having funding extended beyond July next year.
Yeah, excellent question. Andrea, do you want to come and take that one?
Yeah, I'll pick that one up. I think for this process in particular, I think if you can make that clear in the application process that you intend to use ASF funding, but and we know what the situation is with that, so we will apply a level of common sense to how we score on that front. I think it'd be very different if a provider came in who had no footprint in the region at all, didn't have any kind of income stream to fund the actual provision. That would be a different set of circumstances, but we'll definitely appreciate that situation when we look at EOIs and applications.
Thank you.
Anne, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. So Anne Bailey from Form of the Future. So this is clearly about buildings. And one of the things that you said is that it had to be wholly and exclusively devoted to FE provision. And I was wondering whether there was any flexibility about co-locating this with other properties. So, for example, as part of a business park, or adjacent to a school, or somebody who is not currently providing for FE. Now, appreciate that you don't want to fund something that's being used for alternative purposes. You have to protect the investment. But I just wondered about how much flexibility is there to be creative in terms of creating provision in new and different places and spaces.
Andrea, do you want to take that one?
Yep. So I think there's quite a lot of flexibility in that. I think we are looking for a bit of innovation here. So I think the idea of co-locating with an employer, for example, would be a really good suggestion. I think what we would need to do in the process of looking at the kind of wider benefits and outcomes and the kind of impact and return on investment, that's where we'd look to secure, particular level of outputs where we could see that money is going into that place, and as a result X amount of 16 to 18-year-olds and X amount of 19 plus will be able to access a provision over time, where we will see that return on investment. So I think well, hopefully that's answered your question without me waffling on too much, but yeah, really open to innovation and suggestions, and that's really part of the purpose of why we've had this expression of interest in there in the first place, because we know we don't have all the solutions and answers, and you all probably have some really good suggestions and ideas, and so we're really keen to kind of gather that intelligence so that we can start to formulate the application process in a way that will allow us to apply that level of flexibility moving forward.
Thanks, Andrea. Question from Andrew in the chat: is the spend window April 25 to March 26? Yes, is the short answer. As Vi mentioned, obviously, if there's, I think that's very much the intention. That's what we're looking to see, people being able to kind of get going quickly. But of course, we know that sometimes there are unforeseen circumstances and things like that will impact on that. But we are certainly looking for projects that are ready to kind of go. A project that would take a kind of number of years to get through a sort of design and etc is not likely to be suitable at this stage.
I think, Rob, just to add as well for everyone's benefit, that in the EOI we're not asking you to complete a spreadsheet with vast details of exactly what you want to spend. We're looking at ballpark figures in the EOI. We will then in the application process be looking for a more detailed profile of your spend, as perhaps you would have seen in similar capital applications before. And what we would say is that if you are thinking about investing in a significant piece of kit, for example, then to get some quotations would be really helpful, so that there's a level of certainty about the predicted amount of funding that would be allocated to anything significant. So just a point there. Back over to you, Rob.
Thanks, Andrea. Let me come to, I can see there's another one in the chat. Let me come to Catherine first. Do you want to come off mute and ask a question?
Yeah, hi, Catherine Chapman, Innovate Cambridge. So I've got naive questions. So basically, I read this with excitement in terms of the consortium approach, and was kind of just thinking, how do we get involved? So Anne and I had a quick chat and said, we've got expertise in this area from terms of we know what the sectors need. We've got the innovation community all behind us. And I just wonder, how can we be a part of this? Because this is very capital focused, but we'd love to be involved from an expertise perspective. We'd love to be involved in the provision. And, you talked about kind of innovative consortium applications. So I just wonder what your thoughts are on that, how we can get involved.
Yeah, it's really good, Andrew. Do add to this. I mean, I think if you're happy, Catherine, I think if we could pick up separately via an email. I mean, and if you are happy, we can kind of let people know who've attended, kind of pass on your contact details. So if there are people on this call who would be interested in having a conversation, again, if there are people on this call who are kind of interested in sort of meeting other people who might be useful as parts of it, we're happy to kind of do that. There's sort of limited brokerage we can do through this process, but actually one of the benefits of calls like this is actually kind of being able to kind of, as you've just done, raise that. So yeah, why don't we pick that up separately? But certainly we could pass on your details to others as part of some of the information. But I don't know, Andrew, if there's anything else you want to add to that.
No, I think you've covered it. I think it's about how we can network you with other people who are interested, who've got access to the revenue funding that they need to get the provision into the places. And I'm sure there will be people listening right now that might contact you directly as a result as well. So yeah, nothing further to add from me. Thanks, Rob.
Brilliant. Couple in the chat. Let's come to those. So Ian, obviously talking about potential different funding streams. Yes, I think from my perspective, certainly at the expression of interest stage, that kind of broad level of information would be absolutely fine at the expression of interest. Obviously, when we get into the application form, we'd be looking, as Andrea talked about, for probably a bit more of a detailed breakdown. But picking up the kind of earlier answer, we do know that some of this funding will be in a state of flux, and we're also talking about not just if kind of sort of get it developed and built, etc. in the next financial year, we are talking a bit of time away. So I think it's about a broad understanding that you are able to deliver the provision, and that what we're not doing is kind of creating capital investment that then can't be delivered. So hopefully that, Ian, gives you an answer to that one. And Andrea, do butt in if there's anything you want to add at any of these points. Mentioned that bids are not limited. Sorry, this is Ed's question. It was mentioned that bids not limited to one pot of funding if they can meet the need of multiple geographical areas. Will CPCA align bids? Yes, so that's the intention. We will be looking through the EOI process to understand, is this a bid that's specifically focused in a geographical area? And some of that can be very easy. We are planning to do X in this location, which is in this geography. But then there may be others where actually your provision can actually is more mobile in nature, to pick an example, and then actually it may be across, and we'll be looking at that. And then there may be further bids that actually the plan would be to replicate provision in both St Neots and East Cambridgeshire, for example. And again, in there we wouldn't necessarily be saying, well, you have to pick one, and we'll be looking for that. Certainly that's something we're wanting to try and surface through the expression of interest. Ed, so I guess if you've got thoughts about how what you're proposing to do would work across multiple areas, or whether it would actually be in a different part of the combined authority area, that's what we want to try and understand. We've had a broad view on where how the pots should split, but depending on what we see through the expressions of interest may shape that. So I hope that answers the question there. Anything else? I don't want to cut us short, but do appreciate that sometimes these things take a little bit of time to go away, reflect, read things. So I will pause for a second. Brilliant. Dan.
Hi there. Excuse me. Hi there. Yeah, Dan Burns, Cambridge Regional College. And this is fantastic. So I really appreciate the information opportunity. With the what are you looking to fund, obviously around that digital skills, the equipment, etc. One thing that kind of always is in that grey area is software and kind of perpetual licensing. So does software and the perpetual licensing of software fall under the grant bid as well?
Andrew, do you want to take that one?
I'd say yes, we're happy to cover the costs of that, because I know that can be a real barrier to accessing the hardware. and so yes, software, I think we're happy to cover under capital for that purpose. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Excellent. As we said, there is the opportunity to ask questions. We will send out a copy of the slides to all those people who've attended. That will have the link. We'll have the link in the slides, but we'll also send the link separately to the website, which has some of this information that we've covered today. It also importantly has the expression of interest form, and we'll have details of the email address for you to ask questions, skillscapitalgrant@uk.gt.com. Please do keep asking questions. The email address may not be live till tomorrow morning, so if you could just hold your questions till tomorrow, that will just make sure that they don't get kind of lost in the ether. But hopefully you'll have a chance to kind of digest the website. We are more than happy to kind of try and be as clear and helpful as possible through this, because I think one of the things that we heard very clearly and helpfully was we don't want you to waste your time. We know how busy you are. We know how much you've got on. The last thing we want you to do is to not be sure whether actually something's suitable, or whether actually you apply and then it's just kind of instantly sort of deemed not eligible. So please do take advantage of that. Please do engage with us, so that we can be as clear. If following this you also have reflections on things that would be really useful to know more about through the guidance, again, let us know, because we want that guidance document to be as simple as straightforward as possible. We don't want this to be a complicated application process. We want to make it as easy as possible and as clear as possible. So that hopefully gives everyone a bit of confidence there. I can't see any more hands. I can't see any more questions. As I say, I don't want to cut us short, but at the same time, if this gives you all a bit of time back, that is also very welcome, I know, as well. So I will just pause for a minute, and then perhaps Andrea, I'll hand just to you for a final word or two.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, I mean, thanks everybody for joining the call this morning. You know, we're happy that we've tried to build in as much time as possible to give you all the chance to have those conversations and to really start thinking about innovative ideas and working in partnership and collaboration with others. And that's really what we're looking to see. The one thing I perhaps would signpost you to, and I think it's on the link on the slides that takes you to the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authorities website, there is a link for you to be able to access the original feasibility study that was done for this piece of work. And I think that would be an interesting read for you all, and for you to sort of gain more contextual information about the work that we're trying to do here, and why we're sort of channeling this funding on the geographical areas of St Neots, East Cambridgeshire, and the wider region, and the particular sectors that we're trying to target as well. So as Rob said, please do get in touch. You have got until January till the official window opens for applications, but what we are looking to do is give you feedback on those EOIs, to say, yeah, that looks interesting to us, please proceed. Or if we genuinely think that it's not going to tick the boxes, then we will give you that feedback as well, to either give you a chance to reflect on your proposals, or to understand that perhaps that's not what we're looking for and to not proceed. So thanks everybody for joining. The information will be sent out later today, so that you've got access to all of this, and we look forward to hearing from you and working with you over the coming months. So thanks everybody, and thanks to colleagues at Grant Thornton for your support this morning. Have a good day, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Mhm.